We're back, episode 2 of the Driveline podcast here in Arizona. Today, we have another guest. It is our lead high-performance trainer, Tyler Kozlowski. So let's go. We have him back. Welcome back on.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great to have you. It's been a little minute. It's been a couple weeks since the last time we spoke in here. So I'm excited to have you back. Have some really fun stuff on the docket today. I really want to talk about some college stuff with you. Our college off season's upcoming. Guys are starting to wind down a little bit. Getting to that May, June, July time when guys are starting to think about what am I going to do with my off season? How do I want to go about it? So definitely want to get your feedback on that and see what we got. So first of all, how has the last couple of weeks been since we last spoken? What anything new, anything interesting with you? Anything going on?
It's been good. All the pro guys mostly out of here. So just keeping up with them on their in-season training, making sure that first couple weeks the volume of what we're giving them during the season, they're feeling good, they're feeling ready, they feel prepared. So far so good, but still
Wonderful.
Early, so always got to keep an eye on them.
Yeah, definitely keeping in contact. I know that's what I've been doing, watching all of our major league, minor league guys, all those guys that are in season now, even our college guys that are still in season, just keeping up on them, making sure they're healthy, they're feeling good, confident, whether it's just a short text. I try and give those guys as much space usually just to how hectic it is, just having you still have the whole year ahead of you, but you don't need to be texting them nonstop. But it's always good to let them know that you care about them.
Yeah, and it's cool to see all the hard work that they put in the off season, seeing what they can do this year.
For sure.
Yeah, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So that brings us into our topic of the day. Basically getting into kind of that time where college guys are going to start thinking about what am I going to do with my summer? One of the bigger things that we always get is, should I go play summer ball? Should I be playing games? Should I be doing tournaments? You have all those perfect game things that are coming up. And you also just have the option of taking the off season to train and having that full off season of development. Typically, how would you help guys kind of differentiate? How do you walk through that, or how do you help an athlete? Because that's a pretty common question that we'll get. A lot. We've actually had a couple assessments already come in that are college guys are kind of starting to think about it a little bit. How do you help guys? What questions do you ask them, or what things do you feel are important to take into consideration with that?
Yeah. Giving or having them take an honest look at where they currently are. If it's a guy who's playing at their college right now, if they think they're going to be a draft guy, maybe we need to go play some more games, get for more scouts, that kind of stuff. Or having guys know if they have tools that are going to play at the next level or be able to come back in the fall and earn a starting spot. Yeah. So it's you need to be very honest with your career and where you are. And that's where we can kind of getting them in for an assessment and kind of letting them know hey, you stack up against all the college guys that we see, you're below average across the board. Maybe we need to spend the summer training, or you're above average, your skill level is a little bit low, so maybe we need to take a month or two to train and then play on the back half to get ready for fall. So it's it's a delicate balance on where they are, but that's why we have all of our data that we use. We can help them make that decision.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is really, and that's a really hard conversation. I think a lot of people really think that's an easy one to just ask yourself, where do I want to go? Okay, it's really easy to just sit there and say, I want to go play at a really big time school. Take an LSU, for example. That's really easy to say, but it's a really hard question to ask yourself and really dissect. Okay, am I really at that position of when I stack myself up against a guy? I know we train a couple guys at LSU. Dude, I've seen those guys. They're big, they're strong, they're incredibly athletic. They throw the ball very hard. Are you meeting those metrics that are pretty much they're not even recommendations anymore at that point? They're requirements for you to be pitching and or hitting at that type of level. So I think that type of conversation, when you look at yourself in the mirror, being able to disseminate hey, I am in this good position or I'm not. And then another thing on top of that is with our assessment, I think that's super, super valuable for us is our database we're able to. So if you've never done an assessment here, our internal database for strength and conditioning has the ability to kind of break it down and say high school, college, and pro. And even take it a step further, we can look at guys that throw 75 to 80, 80 to 85, 85 to 90, and then 90 plus.
Yeah.
And if you're really gunning to be 90 plus, you can really see like what physical attributes do those guys have that I'm currently lacking. And then you can kind of set yourself up and make sure that you're in a good spot if you decide to do an assessment like that.
It just gives you real feedback right away. Like, I'm not a guy who like physically has the body that is going to be able to go play at one of those schools.
Yeah.
And it's going to take, 3 months of a summer to to like develop those qualities to like maybe give yourself a chance. Like the physicalness of those guys is like step one, and then step two is like baseball's really fucking hard, and you got to have the skill to back it up.
People kind of forget that this game is like really, really hard. I laugh at this because I remember being my senior year of high school and throwing like 78, maybe 80. It was pretty good for me touching 80. But I think I had like some crazy thing going for me that I was like going to beat some San Diego record for like the lowest ERA. And I was like super stoked about that. I'm like, there's just no way coaches aren't going to see this and be like, look at the projectability of this build. I was like 6'3", 155 pounds. I'm like, there's just no way. I'm a dime a dozen. Like there's nobody else out there in the world like this. And then I kind of looked at it and I was like, I had made a few phone calls to some pretty big schools and I was just like surprised. I'm like, how did nobody call me? Like, how did I not get any offers? I think I got like a preferred walk on like UNLV. And they were like, if you decide to do this, you will redshirt. I was just like kind of pissed. So I guess it really puts things in perspective for you. Like it matters. Yes. So you have to be a pitcher. You have to be able to hit the ball. There's some intangibles of the game that for sure are very, very important. You need to be able to have, be a great teammate, be able to put some really good hard work and dedication into it. But there's also like the physical side of the game that like, it doesn't matter how well your numbers or how good your numbers look. If you throw the freaking ball 78 miles an hour, that is not going to project into a really top end D1 or probably even D2, to be honest with you.
Definitely. Yeah. And a big thing that I like doing with our dashboard, with our strength numbers is when we get a high school senior in here that's like wanting to go play at those, I typically don't show him the high school average numbers.
You just bump him up to the college numbers?
I'll bump him up to college. Nice. Like this is like our baseline. Like, we want to be college average by the time we're like going into like the fall of our freshman year.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get to college and spend 3.5 years physically developing. You want to be able to show up on campus day one and like have a shot to go play.
Yeah.
And if you're not around that average number, unless you're some sort of like baseball freak, like your skill level is just like off the board, like you're gonna have a hard time. Which we do see. Yeah, but you're still gonna have a hard time getting on the field.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, even at that point, I have a very, very, very skilled athlete that is going to a pretty big D1, I'd say mid-major D1. Throws the ball really hard and just like hasn't gotten a lot of opportunity. It's pretty interesting because like on paper, you're like, damn, the kid throws 95, 96. I think he texted me he's been up to 97 as a true freshman. And I think those are where like college coaches are really going to value like, hey, having that senior that's been in those shoes a little bit, that's, worked his butt off and has proven I'm going to stay here throughout my tenure. I'm going to make sure I work with the coaches, whatever it may be. So you really have to like really be eye popping when you're a true freshman walking in to like solidify a spot, but also stick in that spot for a good amount of time.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I think those are good things to consider.
And college coaches are like, they're coaching for their job too. So like they aren't going to play the freshman just because like he's a freshman. Like they want the guy who's like physically ready to compete against those other guys.
You got to go win games. If you don't win games, you don't have your job.
Yeah. So like goal number one for them is win games. Goal number two is like to develop. So like you want to show up day one already, either like at the like already developed or on your way to like getting that physical development. So like you don't have to wait around.
Definitely on a head start. Definitely on a head start. So that brings me to another little topic then within this is like, how, as guys are, we're in that, like, what are we in April? So we're in April right now. Season usually ends about like end of May, mid-May for some schools. Yeah. If you were a college guy right now and you were coming down to the end of it, like what are some things you would start to like prep for? What are some things that you would start to like, we said, have that honest conversation with yourself. Like what are some of those things that you would really dive into and look at to like assess what kind of player am I and where do I need to develop in order for me to make that true freshman and make that jump into playing at the college level? Or past college level, excuse me.
If you're a college guy, and you haven't been playing much throughout the year, or maybe you got some time early in the year, towards the end of the season, as you're in conference games, conference tournament, like you're not getting a lot of playing time. Like you can almost like start your off season a little bit sooner,
Really? Okay.
because you're not going through like all the stresses of the games.
Okay.
So you can kind of like get a jump start on that.
Okay.
Or if you're like a bench guy throughout the whole year, like you can almost like continue on your off season lifting throughout the season, just to like prioritize your development, so that next fall you have 2.5 extra months
Yeah.
of preparing for that, rather than do nothing in season, or like maintain
Yeah.
in season and then have the summer. Like you have like that extra time to be able to develop a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a really interesting answer to that, because I never really thought about that. Like, if I was a guy that hasn't gotten a lot of playing time
Mhm.
lately, or like getting into conference play, maybe coach sits you down, or you've just kind of taken notice that, I'm not really getting a whole lot of opportunities. Like, that's not wasted time.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like, shit, I don't, there's nothing for me to work on. Like, we
Mhm.
always talk about that. There's always something to be working on. The guys at the highest level are still working on stuff every single day, whether that's catch play, mobility, strength. There's got to be a way for you to do that. And so, would you say it's more of like the lifting is still important there, yes, but it's probably not pushing a ton of weight. You're probably not having to like squat 3 times a week or anything crazy. Would it just be like, hey, continue to do the same lifts that you've been doing, or is it do something different? How would that kind of look for those guys?
Kind of depends. I mean, every program's different, so there's not going to be like one specific lift that's going to take
Yeah,
you from being like, you throw 85, you're going to be
I
now
wish it was
90.
that easy.
It's going to be like the totality of the program. Like, um, typically it's like the volume that is, volume and intensity that's different from in season to off season.
Okay.
So you can kind of mess with those markers a little bit, just to make sure that like you are getting that time. If you are playing, like obviously games are the most important thing during the season.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if you need to take a little bit of like a back burner on the weight room side, still want to do it. Be able to maintain
yeah.
strength, not lose a lot of stuff. But if you're not in the game, like you can kind of push that stuff a little bit more.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't really think about that. When I was in junior college, like I didn't get to pitch a whole lot, and I remember just like sitting around in the outfield shagging balls, being like,
Yeah.
what the fuck, coach? Like, what am I supposed to be doing right now?" And the opportunities weren't coming. Like, I can kind of look back now with that perspective and being like, damn, I kind of wasted almost 2 months of my season, or 2 months. It was almost like I could have had an additional off season
Yeah.
within the off season, which
Yeah.
would have been electric for somebody like me that was very, very skinny, very underdeveloped, and like
Mhm.
didn't have the physical attributes to continue to play at a level that I wanted to coming
Yeah.
out of junior college.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember in college I was coming to the start of the season like 190, 195 pounds. By the end of the season, I'd be like 175. Like I'd just like lose a shitload of weight. And I was lazy. I didn't want to lift in the
Yeah.
season. Like, but I know if I would have just like done a couple more like in season sessions, like potentially could have kept some weight on. And by the end of the year, and instead of hitting like a ball that like barely gets in the gap, maybe it's like
Yeah.
a little bit more in the gap.
Got a
maybe
little
it's
more
over
juice
fence.
behind it,
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
yeah. Be able to keep like that muscle mass on throughout the season.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really hard thing for a college kid, like, to really grasp that idea.
Mhm.
Because I we've been in those shoes, and it's like, man, like you just are. It's almost like you're just crawling. It
Yeah.
reminds me of the SpongeBob and Patrick moment, where it's like they're racing the snails, and there's
Yeah.
like the really old snail, and there's Gary, and
Yeah.
then Patrick brings Rocky,
Rock.
and he
Yeah.
goes, "It's okay, Rocky, you can go at your own
Yeah.
time." Fun fact:
That's
Rocky
okay,
actually ends
take
up
your time.
winning the race.
Yeah.
But it's true. Like you don't want to be sitting there, and like you really got to like take that into consideration and make sure that, what, I'm getting to the edge of the finish line, and I have time to do this. I can really push myself to
Yeah.
get better. So that's a really good way to think about it. One thing that is something on the throwing side in the beginning of the offseason, like, and you can definitely chime in on this as well, is like, I really try and give guys a little bit of time to deload. You
Mhm.
probably had a long offseason, depending on like what your in-season workload looked like, making sure I'm not just like beating you up even more. I'll typically give some guys, guys call me crazy for this one, but like mentally, I like guys to just have some time to be with family and friends.
Mhm.
You're typically, a lot of guys are out of state, or not close to home. I want those guys to be able to go see your mom and dad. I want you to be able to see your grandma and grandpa, and like go spend some time with family, because I think that's such an undervalued thing for people mentally, just to feel loved and connected by
Yeah.
the people that you're still close with.
Yeah.
And not realizing that, like, yes, I'm all in on the whole 95 or die, like train really hard.
Mm.
I get that. But there's also the mental side of it, that it puts you in a better headspace. So when you are ready to come back, you're rejuvenated, you're
Yeah.
rejuiced, you're recharged, and you just are ready to get after your training from the minute you walk through the doors.
Yeah, fully agree. Like, um, I wouldn't like recommend taking like months off. Like, obviously,
No,
like
no, no, no.
that's time, but like,
Yeah.
it is completely okay to get away from baseball for a set amount of time. Like you said, rejuvenated, come back like body feeling better, mentally
Yeah.
feeling better, and just like be able to hit the ground running and feel really good when you get back.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that happening to me, and it was a big deal for me. I wish it was something I would have appreciated more when I was in college, or even like getting into pro ball when I was overseas. It was just like, man, I really miss those moments of like just being able to like go home and see my parents or
Yeah.
see my girlfriend or whatever it was, and just like spend time with them, because it really put me in a better headspace that like it didn't matter how poorly I pitched or how well I pitched, they still love me as their son or their boyfriend or whatever. And there, you really can't like, there's no like replacing that.
Yeah.
So that's a really undervalued thing in my opinion.
When you get back from something like that, what does the throwing typically look back? Say it's a college guy who threw 100 innings in the
Okay.
in the spring. Like,
Yeah.
he's a guy at say like a mid major.
Okay. Yeah. So typically, like, I would want him to have some deload time. I'd probably give him a week or two off, just depending on like, I like to look back at the previous years as well. So I like to look at like, okay, 2024, 25, you ended up throwing 65 innings, 23, 24, you only pitched 10 innings. So that's a pretty big workload spike. So taking that into consideration, and then making like anywhere from like a 1 to 2 league, basically no throw or very, very light throwing. I would almost always give a guy a week off at minimum.
Yeah.
2 weeks would just kind of depend of like when you start integrating some like just not like light, nice and easy catch play. But I think like restoring range of motion and just like having guys fully recover from that. So when you do, a lot of times guys want to come in and just do velo, and that's typically the lowest hanging fruit for a lot of guys. I would agree. But you need to be physically prepared to take on that type of training workload and training, like accumulating that much stress. If you're not, if your shoulder, internal rotation is usually really, really good, and then after a long season, it's just gotten really, really poor because of just the natural demands of throwing the baseball hard. I want guys to be able to restore that range of motion, get a lot of their strength back. Like you said, losing 20 pounds in season is a huge deal for these guys. So I think being able to like pack on some healthy weight again, feeling strong. I think that's typically how I'll go about like probably the first month is basically just like get some range of motion and some strength back, prioritize really letting the high performance staff, letting you guys really hammer home some either whether that's mobility stuff, strength stuff, anything that is like immediately we can attack that's not going to totally bomb their CNS, and then allowing them to get back into an on-ramp of like, hey, let's get some good long toss in, let's get some good ball flight in, let's identify a couple of things that we want to work on in the upcoming higher intensity throwing phases that we're going to be attacking. So I think that's it's a nuanced question as well, because I would want somebody ideally to come in right after the season to do an assessment, because then I don't have to worry about that on ramp and like any changes that have been made.
Get their mocap with like their game ready. This is how like they've been moving the last few months.
Exactly. It's like that's the most fresh I'm going to have you. That's the most like realistically exactly where you were in season, like the positions you're hitting and how you're moving on the mound. I think that's really, really imperative to know, like, okay, this is when you're at your best or when you're like peaking, quote unquote. And then what does it look like as we're progressing through our off season? So yeah, I would love to. I think assessments as you're getting out of season are super, super important. It can be very valuable to help your trainer just really understand who you are in season, because in season and out of season are totally different people, and like what you're training, all the different stimulus you're throwing at the body. One's basically just like go compete and win games. The other one's like, okay, I'm building. It's a totally different vibe. Is it any different on the lifting side for you guys? Is it mostly kind of what I hit on, like the restore range of motion?
For sure. Typically it'd be like a week or two of like restoration lifts. Like, you're hitting full range of motion stuff, getting that motion back. If there's anything that's been nagging them throughout the year, make sure you clean that up right away. And then we'd start on like an accumulation or non-ramp in the weight room. Like we're hitting like some like decent volume, plyometric sprint stuff. We're doing more like extensive, so we're doing a lot more like ground contacts, but not like the intensity is a little bit lower. Just like building up like timer intention in the weight room, like a little bit more like volume to pair with like the throwing stuff where you're not doing a ton of like high stress stuff. So we can kind of kind of beat you up a little bit more on the
Yeah,
weight room
for
side.
sure.
Make sure that they can, like you said, handle that total stress and then be able to transition to more like we're starting to move a lot faster. We're
Yeah.
getting a little bit more intensive on the plyometric, the sprint, the med wall work, and trying to pair that up with like when he starts to velo or
Yeah.
throw bullpens, that kind of stuff.
Super important because I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times it's like, man, like you did not. I like to think about it as like the old house adage of like, you need to have a very, very, you don't ever build the roof of the house first, which is like, in my opinion, the pitch design, the live at bats, those things of where like, okay, I've already built all of my house. Now I want to like look at it and enjoy it. I really do view strength as like it's the foundation of the house. It's the concrete that you pour in the very beginning that like, if I don't pour this correctly, if I end up pouring this with sand, like my house is just going to sink at some point, and it's not going to be able to withstand all of the time. It doesn't matter how hard you work in the middle of that velo phase. If you didn't do that first month correctly, you're basically just playing catch up the rest of your off season, and then probably ending up paying for it a little bit in the fall when you're trying to win a spot, and even potentially into your season if you just, and it's just a compound, it's like a snowball effect that if you just don't do it right from the get-go, good luck. You're kind of playing from behind the eight ball the whole time.
Yeah, and we see it all the time where it's like the guy's frustrated because velo is not increasing, and it's like, well, what'd you do 6 weeks ago lifting? Oh, I missed like half my lifts. And
What
you're
you
like,
doing, man?
well, yeah, no shit. Like you're not throwing hard. It's like
For real.
your nervous system, your body's just like tanked right now because you weren't able to handle you're not able to handle what you're doing. So it's like, yeah, you gotta build the base first before you can start to.
Yeah, you
really
basically go from a 0 to 100, and you're like, why is my car breaking?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, same with like in season, like towards the end of the year, my velo starts to decrease. Well, yeah, you haven't touched a weight
or
in
anything.
6 to 8 weeks. Like,
No bueno.
yeah, no shit. It's not. You're not throwing as hard.
No bueno. We'll get bilingual. No bueno. We need a lot of that. Definitely very, very important. So yeah, there was another thing I wanted to touch on for the college stuff. As they're coming, the last thing I wanted to touch on was, okay, guys, I get this question all the time. I just had it pop up. Guys are running long distance. Like an athlete asked me this, and I told him I'd bring it in here, and I just wanted to like get your opinion on it. I know that kind of wraps up our college stuff. So if you do want to get in here for an assessment, we are here in Arizona. Come on down. We'll do the assessment. You'll be able to really stack yourself up. But I really wanted to ask you, like, long distance running. It gets a bad rap. However, I have been kind of thinking about it a little bit, and I'll give you my hypothesis of what I'm thinking as a pitcher, and I would love to hear your opinion on this. There is a specific, people talk about like long distance running. It's very important for lactic acid. That's not true. That's not really how that works. It's not a very good way of looking at it. However, what I will say is like the sprints are very important. I understand that, but with long distance, like how and why, is there a certain threshold that you would feel like is necessary for a guy to be like, okay, you probably don't need to be running a 20-minute mile. That's heinous. But you also probably don't need to be running a 5-minute mile either. Where is that, like, is there a specific line? Because I can't tell you how many college guys I get that they're just like, dude, shin splints, losing weight, just exhausted, just never fully recovered. But I do think that there's a little bit in there of like, you probably don't want to be on the very, very far end of it of like not being able to run very far at all. But you probably don't want to be the track athlete either.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in you need to have like your base level of aerobic capacity. So
aerobic is
like distance, how well you're like able to like control your heart rate, like how well you're able to use like oxygen throughout.
Okay, so that's with oxygen, and the anaerobic is the opposite, is without. Okay.
Yeah. So you should have a base level of aerobic capacity. That's going to help you with like being able to bounce back from like day to day, like how your nervous system's be able to like perform a little bit better.
Okay.
But baseball is an anaerobic sport.
Yeah, you get told that all the time. You're not just like, it's not a marathon of throwing balls. Like you do get 15, with the pitch clock, 15 to 30 seconds, but it's not constant.
Yeah, you're not throwing a pitch at 60% effort.
No.
You're throwing it at 90, 95% effort.
Yeah.
So it's more of like your anaerobic capacity on how well you're able to repeat after like max effort attempts.
Okay.
So doing sprint work, like going like really hard for like 20 seconds, having like a 20-second break, like that kind of stuff is more like sport specific towards baseball rather than going and running like a mile.
Is there any way to combat if your college coach is like, you have to run 3 miles, we're going to be the track team? Is there any way to even combat that? I mean, I guess just like more nutrition, more hydration, prioritizing your sleep, maybe.
Well, first, like, your college coach determines your playing time.
Very true. Got to be careful with that one.
If he tells you to go run poles, you should go run poles.
Shit out of luck, pal. You better go get running.
Yes. How you would combat with it, like, you're going to need to focus more on like nutrition. You're going to need to focus more on like sleep and recovery and that kind of stuff. Big thing with it is like guys will like lose weight pretty quickly with it if you're running like that all the time.
Especially those guys that are like high metabolism. Like I think of myself, for example, just like a longer, skinnier guy that just like burns calories like crazy. You know?
Yeah. So one, do what your coach says.
It's a very good point.
Because you want to play baseball.
For real.
And not sit the bench.
Unless you want to be on that fucking bench, pal.
Yeah. And then just making sure that you're able to like recover from it. And if he tells you you're running poles on Monday, you shouldn't be going and like playing pickup hoops basketball on Tuesday and like just burning yourself out day to day. Like give yourself a day to recover.
Gotcha.
Unless you don't have that option with coaches.
Yeah. No, the only reason why I ask is that I feel like that's just such a common thing that, you know, we have our remote athletes that are in college and it's just like, hey man, like I'm getting beat up. It's typically like in the fall that you see that.
Yeah.
And it becomes less and less during in season, but you still have some coaches that are hammering it home like after a start, got to run 3 miles, you know, and it's just like, how do you effectively tell that athlete to listen and do it, but also not have him feel the repercussions of that type of choice, I guess, or that not really a choice, but you kind of have to do it. But still, you know, still got to pay the price of it somehow, some way. If
they're telling you to do like the flush run after, like it's like it potentially is gonna help a little bit. Like I said, your aerobic capacity is beneficial from like being able to bounce back.
Okay.
But you'd want to make sure you're not doing so much that you're going to be banged up for the next 3 days after.
Very good point.
You mentioned earlier, like shin splints, like that kind of stuff.
Dude. You hear that one all the time.
Yeah. So how we would try to combat that earlier than that is like, if you know in the summer, like you come training in the summer and you know when you get back to the fall, you're going to have like a conditioning test or something. Like
Hell week.
We'll start like prepping for that here. Because we want to give you the best chance to play wherever you're going.
For sure.
And if that is one of the things that you're going to do, like we'll start prepping for it.
I think of the little salt bay. It's just like sprinkle that in real quick for me. Let me make sure that I don't go there. And again, don't go from no running, 0 to track star 100 and now I'm pooped and I want to just like not throw anymore or whatever.
Yeah, even with the pros, like they'll do some teams will still do like conditioning tests, which like don't necessarily agree with. But, but again, if they are going to be testing it, we want to make sure that they're prepared and ready to do that, so they don't tweak a hammy, tweak an ankle, do all that.
That would be worst case scenario. Yeah, definitely worst case.
Which I think we do a pretty good job here with knowing what orgs are going to be doing certain things that we can help prepare those guys for it.
Just another way. Drive-Line's just we kind of know how to do that thing. We kind of know how to get you prepared and ready for a solid season. So the last little bit, wrapping up the college stuff, you know, to just kind of recap on that a little bit. Definitely want to prioritize in the beginning, you know, have a very honest conversation with yourself. Look at, you know, where you're at and where you want to go. Be honest with yourself. It's a tough conversation. Really weigh your options. See, hey, am I in a position where I am, I'm going to showcase a really, really good side of myself that I'm confident in, that I feel like is going to project at the next level or wherever I want to go. From there, identify a plan and find a place to train, potentially Drive-Line Arizona, and make sure that you're stacking yourself up against, you know, some of those that, you know, like I said, our database, being able to compare yourself against those people that are in those shoes. And then, you know, lastly, being able to start to prepare for some of the in-season demands as you head out, you know, with live at-bats, you know, your lifts changing, and then making sure you're heading into the season feeling strong and ready for a very, very successful season. So the last thing I wanted to do is, I've been seeing this thing all over Instagram. I'm gonna throw out some terms and some things, and I just want you to give me either you pick. You want to do a rating, or do you want to do the first word that comes to your mind?
Rating.
A rating. Okay. We're going to do a 1 through 10 scale. It's just a quick bang, bang, bang. First thing that comes to your mind when I say the word, just let it fly. 3, 2, 1, Normatec boots.
6 out of 10.
Parachutes when you're running, that like resistance parachutes.
Parachutes, 3 out of 10. Resisted sprints, 10 out of 10.
Ooh, okay. Might hop back to that one. BFR / a Suji machine.
9 out of 10.
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay.
Mainly because when I do it on myself, I get
A
lightheaded.
massive pump.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
get anxiety through the roof, but it's really good for you.
Okay. 9 out of 10 BFR Suji. Training specifically for fascial slings.
3 out of 10.
And the last one, water bags.
3.5 out of 10.
Okay, 3.5.
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you think that the BFR and the Suji are so beneficial?
The science behind it is very good. A lot of research has gone into it. Being able to use it with guys who are rehabbing or something's bothering them, where we can load up tissues with a lighter load and get the same effects as doing it like with a heavier load is
Okay.
very important. So on the rehab side, it's huge. It's a game changer.
Yeah, dude, I
And
can
then
see
just using it for guys who need to recover or something's bothering them is awesome.
Yeah. For the things that don't know, BFR just stands for blood flow restriction.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like constrains your arm or like squeezes your arm or
Yeah.
wherever you want to put it, depending on what you're rehabbing or what you're trying to, send that stimulus to. And it basically just like restricts the blood flow from it. So then that muscle thinks it's working at 100% or a specific amount of it of its intensity without actually having to load it and like stress it all that way with the
Yeah.
weight. It's
So
just doing it with blood flow.
you'll typically it's like a 30 15 rep scheme. So you're doing like a lot more reps and you'll get the same response as doing
That time
like
under tension.
yeah, as like
Okay.
a lower rep scheme of using a heavier.
Gotcha. All right. Well, cool. So that wraps it up. I like this little bit. I think I might incorporate this more often with everybody that comes on, just to like kind of have a little fun thing, and then just kind of see if there's anything that stands out. I thought the parachute for running one. I know we talked about this before we hopped on. It's just like the dude reminds me of the dude that's got like the weights behind him and the treadmill. And you actually educated me a little bit. I was like, why the fuck is that so funny? Physics. If you don't know, look into it. It's hilarious. But physics. The rubber bands aren't doing crap.
Physics is a crazy thing.
It really is. So anyway, that's going to wrap it up, man. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your time. Obviously, it's always great to, for me especially, being a throwing trainer, I love being able to have somebody in here that has a much more eye and perspective for the strength and conditioning world. So I always appreciate your opinion. Do you have anything for the people at home? Anybody that's watching you out there?
I don't have anything.
All right. Well,
Thank you for having me
man.
on.
Appreciate you. And next week we'll be back on next Wednesday with another guest. Thanks for watching.